have to have an unnatural motivation to do this. That this is the only thing you can do. You have to be driven. You have to be like a drug addict. I need to make another movie.
They just think that you just show up on set and you open a box and it's done, and you flip a switch and it goes.
It's very hard to invent a new monster. And I think that people are more comfortable with their fears if they know what the monster is.
The audience goes, wait a minute, we're not in the hands of a master, we're in the hands of a maniac.
There's his head. All right, 5 sculptures. I just need to make sure I remember how many we did. And hey, Andy, this pair of hands that you sculpted, do these hands go with that head?
They will when they're done, yes. They're intended for that. They're not quite done.
I know we got 4 bodies. There's 2 there and 2 here. We'll probably just want to make sure when they start running the feet that we can put feet with those. Regine and I are making a list right now so we can anticipate what else needs to get finished.
Right.
And then Kevin's going to do this body. I had them run it with a skeleton in it.
Oh, okay.
So we can empty this whole thing out and dress the whole thing as a torn apart body. And then I'll probably have you or Kevin paint that drowned zombie, and then we have our burned zombie as well.
Okay.
So. Elijah Wood's coming. So he had just sent me an email saying, hey, I got a little project that I'm working on and producing, and are you available? Thank you. Because I know him from Sin City, and we got to be buddies a while back. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, what you guys want to do with it, creature-wise.
And we're trying to start a horror film production company. And that's sort of why we wanted to talk to you about the notion of kind of partnering up and being our go-to for effects.
I mean, my tastes in terms of the kinds of horror stuff that I like, I tend to like more intellectual horror movies. I really liked Paranormal Activity.
Same. Loved it.
I loved it. As a matter of fact, the trailer was on last night, and I watched it in slow motion. Yeah. I was looking for stuff in the trailer.
Yeah. Same.
With a deal like this that you're talking about, there might be some movies that may be a little heavier prosthetics-wise, and then there might be some that are a little lighter, and you kind of juggle it.
Do you want to do a tour?
Yeah, well, pop around and take a look. You know, I think I still have your head around from Sin City.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
I'm sure it's in a box someplace.
Yeah.
That's the featured zombie from Walking Dead.
Oh, sweet.
Myself, Howard Berger, and Bob Kurtzman founded KNBFX Group. Basically, it was 3 of us that got together with each individual talents and decided that we wanted to be able to provide special effects makeup, creature design, character design, prosthetics, blood gags, puppets, animatronic, animals, anything that you could think of. We've done 900 movies. We've become one of the, if not the most prolific makeup effects company in the world. So there's Predator.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's the new one.
Right.
Oh, awesome. This is stuff that Jason is running it. Are you getting good stuff? Jason did a great, amazing job.
That's fantastic.
You
totally nailed it.
I love him. He is soft. See, look, but that's the classic. That's the original.
The giant eyes.
And he had a little
Wow, what's that from?
manufactured Grindhouse.
Oh, okay. Who's this?
This was a guy from Land of the Dead.
Oh, okay.
Dude, you know about all this.
Oh, I do.
I don't know if I can tell you. So yeah, you know, this is the new day.
Man, I swear I could live at a place like this.
I know, man.
Oh, this is the mother from Psycho.
I want you to go in for a kiss.
Perfect. We're not nerds.
Hey guys, I gotta disengage.
Well, thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah, it was great. It was great to see you.
Makeup effects and special effects go back to the very dawn of cinema. All of the directors of the modern age would fully admit they can dream up the monster, but someone actually has to make it real. And it's the makeup artists and the special effects artists that make dreams real.
Well, how do I get into this? I get that question a bunch of times. I'm like, dude, that's the worst question you can ask me. That's right up there with walking into the shop and go, hey, do you guys make monsters here? And one guy once walked in and said, you guys make monsters here? I said, no, we fix refrigerators. But yet the shop's filled with monsters, so go figure.
We get hired because the people that meet us know that Howard and I will literally be right next to them in the trenches, and they can never turn and go, wait, let's charge the hill, and look around and go, wait, where is everybody? We're always there, leading the charge.
Camera detail.
Go hot on the effects, please.
And hold on.
Okay, Quentin.
Okay, I'll do 3, 2, 1 on 1. Here we go.
Shake, Andy, shake it.
3, 2, 1. That was gnarly.
We're on set in Berlin, working at the movie studios that Joseph Goebbels had used to produce all of his propaganda films for Hitler. So we're there, and the producer on the film is using Joseph Goebbels' old office as his office, and we're doing the makeup test on the actor who's playing Adolf Hitler. So Jake Garber and I are in there, and we're putting all the pieces on, and we get the guy ready for his wardrobe. He steps outside the trailer for a cigarette. He's full Hitler makeup with the hair and the mustache and the whole thing.
Say something in German.
Wiener Schnitzel.
And he's in a trench coat standing outside the makeup trailer smoking his cigarette. And Jake and I looked out the door and I said, this is not the first time this studio has seen this, you know. It was just a little creepy, but kind of interesting, you know.
Yeah, even that sawing motion is good, the way the head moves with it as it's going. There you go. It was a really challenging shoot because everything needed to be so authentic, and you had all these characters and all this stuff going on.
I think everybody's looking at the scalpings and the swastika carvings as sort of what they're seeing our work is, but we ended up sneaking in some character makeups in there as well, which is stuff that I really like to do. My hand made an appearance at the end of the movie, doubling for Brad Pitt. This hand doubled Brad. And ended up doing the carving into Christoph's head. I didn't trust anybody else to do it because it was actually a razor-sharp knife and there was a protective plate on Christoph. And I just didn't want to hand it over to an overzealous double or background or something to do that. So Quentin was fine with that. So I think we did it. I think we did it 2 or 3 times.
The last night we were on set in Germany, we all went out to dinner, and Quentin pulled me aside and said, you know, I could never do a movie and not look to my right and know that you were there. He said, that's part of why I love doing what I do, is because I know I have these people around me. And it was one of the greatest compliments that I'd ever received, because I want everything to be perfect. The last 2.5 years have been a little crazy. I was killing Nazis, and then I was doing makeup on nubile young teenagers to be eaten by piranha, making predators. I mean, I kind of sort of hit the stride. Anything that a 12-year-old horror nerd or an 18-year-old horror nerd or a 47-year-old horror nerd would want to do, I've been fortunate enough to do. Only one's left. There you go.
Thanks so much.
You got it, buddy. So then I thought, oh man, I get to do it like a real actor.
Greg Nicotero. I met Greg on Walking Dead. So he comes up talking to me, and he had this long, hair and this rotted face, and I said, nice to meet you. Yeah. My introduction into the film, I come out of the woods, and there's a zombie eating a deer. But I have like dead squirrels around my neck and a crossbow, and I'm like, what the fuck? What? Like screaming and being obnoxious. And he was the zombie eating the deer. The Walking Dead was something that I stumbled into going into my
local comic book shop. I looked at it. The art looked very intriguing. I thought, well, it could be crap or it could be great. I don't know. I'll take it home, but I can't leave it here. It's a zombie thing, so of course I'm going to buy it. And I took it home, and I found that I read it that night, and I found that not only was it great stuff, operating on a very adult level, but it was kind of a zombie-themed piece of material that I had been looking for.
I knew that if this was going to work in a television show, you know, the zombies would have to look right. And I knew that if Greg Nicotero and his team was involved, that the zombies would definitely look right. I know I spoke to him on the phone for the first time, and I remember I was like, oh, I've got all these cool ideas for zombies, and oh, you could do this and you could do that. And he was kind of like, yeah, I know. And I kind of realized, like, I'm on the phone with Greg Nicotero telling him how to do zombies, and this is the first time I've ever talked to him, you know, and I was like, wow, he does not like me. This is not good. And so I kind of just went, I'm sure you know what you're doing. I'll let you go. It was great talking to you, you know, and I got off the phone quickly.
I mean, you're sort of walking towards the camp, and as soon as you see him, you're a little more animated, and you're going for him. And then he's going to take you guys out. Okay, and background zombies. And Morales. Excellent. That was good.
Truthfully, I think what makes our show so neat is that we're really exploring that these zombies were us. They were people that we loved. They were our sisters. They were people's wives. There has to be something really painful and touching and poignant about them. And I think that Greg's done a really terrific job, you know, creating that.
Now, Greg started off on a zombie movie. One of my favorites, in fact, Day of the Dead. He springs from the rotting mulch of the zombie tradition, you know, and he's done so many of them.
As you refine your craft and as you sit on set and you do a gag and then you go, wow, that it looked good. I'll bet you I can make it better. So having that chance and having that opportunity and then having people watch the show and go, oh my God, how did they do that? Is that a makeup? Is that a puppet? Is that, to me, that's the ultimate compliment. When you have an audience that, in this day and age, can't figure out how we did it. Wow, perfect. Okay, gonna catch it? Ready? Oh, right between your fingers.
What does your daddy do at work?
He makes monsters.
I know. When you're ready, walk towards me as a zombie, okay? Come on. Ah! What do you think? Should Devin go back in time or forward in time? Forward.
Mostly my favorite movie is Transformers Revenge of the Fallen.
Yeah, do you know what your dad's favorite movie is?
No. No.
There's a giant shark.
Okay, Jaws. My dad works on zombies, and now like all the scary movies he does, I'm not scared.
So this is a book that I wrote when I was your age called Monsters of the World. And there's Dracula. I did a drawing of Dracula, and then I wrote, Dracula is a vampire. He only lives at night. He loves blood. Dracula sleeps in a coffin. He has fangs about 1 inch long. When Dracula goes out at night, he sucks blood. Killings, look how many people he killed. 1 million. There's Godzilla. He has fire-breathing breath. Spelled wrong. And then there's the Wolfman. Wolfman only changes when the moon is full. He can run faster than a deer. He can tear faster than an alligator. And I like that he's got his fingers broken backwards.
Yeah.
And he's got a fuzzy belly button. And then just like no shoes and then like a brown, it looks like he pooped on his pants. And?
Yeah.
The end.
Monsters are monsters. And I can deal with monsters. But zombies and vampires, they're almost real. They're very real. Is he taping this?
Yeah,
no. Or when I was pregnant with Gregory, I read every blood-curdling book that I could get my hands on. And it was fun and exciting to be scared. I don't know if that's unusual or not, but it was, then when he was born, he came out drawing monsters.
My brother Brian and I would go and spend the weekend with my grandparents, and I would sketch all weekend long, while my grandfather would show Super 8 monster movies. And we would make him run it forwards, and then he'd run it in reverse. So I'd seen The Creature from the Black Lagoon 300 times by the time I was 10 years old.
He had a big tin under his bed, and it had hundreds of magazines in it. And he would look at them all the time.
And it was literally the holy grail. There wasn't the internet, so you couldn't find pictures of monsters anywhere other than Famous Monsters magazine.
My quest for movies that I could have for my own collection definitely rubbed off on them. And so their interest in movies began to develop, I think, in part as a consequence of that. Then they began to play act and make movies.
I mean, we made literally probably at least 100 different movies that were either on reel-to-reel or were on film.
Action!
He's dead now.
And Greg came up with everything. As far as effects, I know Greg was really into the Towering Inferno, so he wanted to burn and blow things up.
They were normal kids growing up.
Cans of black powder, gasoline, matches, torches, machetes. I ended up in the emergency room with tendons cut.
Wrestling out in the backyard, throwing each other in the swimming pool.
You know, diving board fight scene, and he went in and missed the pole.
Fighting. Kids fight. That's what they do.
The Logan's Run effect, where when you would fire this gun, it would make a specific kind of explosion. Where when he threw the match in, he was standing too close over it. I actually watched it explode and go up, hit him in the face, and go all the way around his face, burned his hair, burned his face. Yeah, this was dangerous stuff. It's really amazing that we didn't either end up dead or at least maimed for life.
In the late 60s, early 70s, there was a TV show on in Pittsburgh called Chiller Theater. And we would have our taco-flavored Doritos, and we would have our French onion dip, and it was like our event. You know, we're ready, Saturday night, ready for the monster movie.
He would always get upset because my interest was less than his, and he didn't want to watch him alone.
One of us would start nodding off.
So I'd be sleeping on the floor, and he would go into the bathroom and take a washcloth and wet it and come in and throw it on my face. Come on, you gotta stay up with me. You know, the Wolfman's on tonight. I'm like, okay. The Wolfman, whatever.
And I think the worst thing in the world would be knowing that there's this great movie that you're dying to see, and you're in your room, it's 11:25, the movie starts in 5 minutes, and you close your eyes, and you wake up, and it's the next day, and you missed it. Anyone that grows up in Pittsburgh, you're sort of born and bred with this kind of desire to learn about zombies. You know, you drive up Interstate 79 and you go, oh, that's where they shot Night of the Living Dead. There's the cemetery in Evans City. Or you drive, you go Christmas shopping at the Monroeville Mall, and while you're buying your Christmas gifts, you're waiting for a zombie to come around the corner. So I was a fan of George's films from when I was very young.
We felt that we had made a film when we finished Night of the Living Dead. I didn't think that none of us, I thought that it would ever become Night of the Living Dead. We actually went back and reshot in the dead of winter a couple of scenes in order to, just sort of beef it up and push it a little more, like the eating of the guts and all of that stuff. One of the investors happened to be a meat packer who brought actual intestines from the slaughterhouse, and that we were able to use. I always loved monster films. I mean, I grew up on, I'm old enough that I saw not the original release of Frankenstein, but the reissue of Frankenstein, right when I was sort of at the age when I was allowed to, in the Bronx, where I grew up, go to movies alone.
I saw The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, and I had what is called suspension of disbelief. I was enchanted. I adored it. I was right there on that beach with that Cyclops. I just went crazy.
Well, I grew up in the 1950s in a small town in Kentucky. And around that time, there was a company called American International Pictures. They released double bills, usually of horror films and science fiction movies. And I fell in love with horror and science fiction during that time. Let's see, we had It Conquered the World.
You'll feel the heart-stopping strength of the most fearful monster ever known.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first.
It conquered the world.
The She Creature, Terror from the Year 5000.
Attack of the Puppet People, or, Gorgo.
The ones created by radiation are my favorites. I just love the big bugs and tarantulas.
Let's all be terrified of nuclear problems, because it makes for 50-foot women, which terrifies men all over the planet. But
when I was a kid, liking this horror stuff or this science fiction stuff made you an oddball.
I think at probably it's 5 years old, I was like, I love monsters. I love monsters so much that my mom, who was an artist, drew me a full-size picture of my favorite monster, which was the creature from the Black Lagoon, and then hung it on my bedroom door. I would leave the door open and look at it all night long, laying in bed, looking at the creature from the Black Lagoon.
We all were the weird kids that the neighbors' mothers wouldn't let their children play with, and we all spent a lot of time in the basement making bizarre masks and learning to sculpt and doing all of that sort of thing. So yeah, it's the same old story.
There's a specific kind of shorthand that develops if you love genre stuff.
Greg's shorthand with Frank Darabont is great. Frank can say, like, I'm thinking it needs to be more, and Greg go, like, Evil Dead-ish. He's like, yes, Evil Dead, exactly. Meanwhile, there's a room full of executives and people are like, what? I don't understand.
We'll have conversations where we just drop movie lines all night, like, I was just saying the Jaws line as we were walking up the steps here. I was saying some Jaws stuff. And it just comes out because it's so ingrained in us, And I think, outsiders, left-brain people might not appreciate it as much, or because they're like, these guys are a bunch of idiots, But to us, it's like the bloodline.
Witchy Poo Chin. We know what Witchy Poo Chin means, Nobody else does, but we know how to take the lead, and it's just a shorthand because the guys we deal with are all crazy monster film fanatics, and so are we.
Growing up in Pittsburgh, the idea of being involved in anything film-related, I may as well have lived on the moon. Sketching and drawing and building models and painting was always a hobby. My parents kind of put the notion in my head that, you're going to be a doctor and you're going to go to medical school and you're going to take over your dad's practice.
I don't think there's any physician or any professional anywhere who wouldn't like to see their son follow in their footsteps. So I expected Greg to do that. Then came Rome.
It was our first trip to Europe, so it was a couple days in London, a couple days in Paris, a couple days in Italy, and lo and behold, my parents wanted to go to Alfredo's. It's the home of fettuccine Alfredo, and we had, I was 16 at the time, Brian was 14 at the time. And we walk in and we sit down, and George Romero's at the next table. Literally sitting at the next table, and I'm freaking out.
Conversation ensued. He said that he was doing another movie in Pittsburgh at the Monroeville Mall. It was called The Dawn of the Dead. Greg and Brian were beside themselves with excitement about meeting him, about hearing this. And so Romero said, you guys are welcome to come on out and watch the filming. They did. Greg met Tom Savini, and Tom started to show Greg how he did special effects and what techniques he used and what materials he used.
Like for a kid who was 17, 18 years old at the time that sort of loved monster movies, that was a dream come true. You have this guy who was responsible for Dawn of the Dead and Friday the 13th, which were two of the biggest independent creature effects movies at the time.
And finally, one summer, he said, Dad, I'd like to take a semester off from my pre-med studies because George Romero offered me a job working with Tom on the Day of the Dead.
Between the time that I had met George and Day of the Dead, which was a 4 or 5 year period, makeup effects had literally moved to the forefront of genre filmmaking. You know, you had Rick Baker, you had Rob Bottin, you had Stan Winston. It was everything from American Werewolf in London and The Howling and The Thing and Cat People and like every movie that you can think of, all were sort of riding this wave that Savini in part started. You know, Dawn of the Dead and Friday the 13th began this wave of makeup effects gags that were put in the spotlight. And so I took the job. And then the world just changed.
First, he created the most frightening film ever made. Then, he took his unique vision of terror one step further. Now, George A. Romero takes us out of the night, beyond the dawn, and into the darkest day of horror the world has ever known. Day of the Dead.
I met Greg on Day of the Dead in, I think, 1984, Halloween. We came, Howard Berger and I were roommates, and we flew to Pittsburgh, and they picked us up at the airport and drove us to the Wampa Mine, where I met Savini for the first time, and Greg. Being in the Wampa Mine was a very unusual experience. You go in at night, and you come out at night, so it was kind of like being in prison, for sure. Prison with bats. A lot of bats on the walls.
This guy walked past me, and it was Greg Nicotero, and he went, "Hey guys, how you doing? By the way, I just want to let you know Tom Savini's an asshole." And then walked past me, and I went, "Okay." And then the next thing I saw Tom Savini, Ron Bass, and go, "Hey, how you doing? I'll be right back. I have to play a practical joke." And that was our first introduction to the world of Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero.
And it was great. You know, I organized all the zombie shoots, and all of a sudden they had somebody keeping their eye on that department, which allowed Tom to be free to be creative, and they didn't have to worry about it. It was a big movie. Once I got it in my blood, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
After the movie ended, I came home, and I had met up with my friend Bob Kurtzman, and we had gotten a house together. And I said, "Listen, you got to meet this guy, Greg Nicotero. He's super, super cool. I'm going to really try to get him to move out here."
Howard and I talked about it. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to come to LA and just sort of check it out.
Greg's like, "I got to tell my folks that I'm not going back to med school, and I'm going to move to LA." And I went, "Okay." And his dad's this doctor, and always gave us the look. So I remember Greg and I were standing there, and we had just started growing our hair to be kind of cool 80s makeup effects guys. So our hair was probably about here. And I remember we were standing there, and Jim was sitting down looking at us, and one eyebrow was raised. And Greg said, "Well, I'm not gonna go back to school, and I want to move to LA, and da-da-da." And Jim just looked at us and went, "You guys will be nothing with hair like that." That was his only comment. And I was like, "Oh boy." Anyhow, Greg moved out, and we became best of friends. Actually, myself, Bob Kurtzman, and Greg were the best of friends.
All right, it's Monday morning. I haven't cleaned up the room yet, but I usually do make my bed.
We had the house and everything, and we called it the House of Wayward Makeup Artists, because essentially, if you were a makeup effects person and you didn't have a place to stay or whatever, you could come stay at our place. And it was just a big giant free-for-all, a bunch of stinky, smelly makeup effects guys.
Okay, this is the car that I go to work in every day. This is the Howard Berger mobile.
We were the next wave of guys that were showing up from all over the country. You know, any town that had these type of dudes who wanted to do this all migrated there at this time. So it was a real neat time to be out there. And we had this nice little, you know, club about it, you know, and we all were cool with each other. And back then, a lot of shops would, you know, if you know, Greg Cannon back then had a great shop. If he was gearing up for a show, he would just call another shop and say, hey man, you got any guys that you're releasing soon? Send them over my way. And it was so cool to just like shop jump, and you know, you worked for everybody, and it was neat, really special time for all of us.
I mean, we were kind of all scattered, and then what ended up happening was Mark Shostrom got a gig on Evil Dead 2 and hired myself, Howard, Bob.
We're ready to go to work.
Okay, Bob, I think you should really do it this way. No, you're doing it all wrong. You gotta do it the other. No, you go ahead. Kind of do it like all my skull. What? Nothing.
We built everything in LA, and then we went to location. That still probably is one of the most fun film shoots I've ever worked on. All right, this is Greg working on Evil Dead 2.
No, I wasn't cheating on you.
And I always had my video camera with me, so it was just something that I had done on Day of the Dead. I was filming all of Tom Savini's behind-the-scenes footage, so when Evil Dead 2 came up...
Don't be alarmed, because you see, it's only a picture.
I just had my camera. Plus, I was putting everybody's contact lenses in, so I couldn't get very covered in goop because I always had to worry about everyone's lenses. So my hands were clean a lot of times, so I just pick up the video camera and shoot. It was so much fun, and it was just literally every time you turned the camera on, the guys would start performing for the camera.
Oh, hello.
We'd be ready to do some gigantic stunt or some big scene, and I'd turn the camera on and someone would go, hello. So we're about, and would go into this persona.
Yeah. Good luck to you, Bruce.
Thanks,
Good luck.
Sam. We know this is very dangerous.
I hope you can survive this.
Thank you.
And action. Let her fly. Fly ball, eyeball. Scream into the camera a little more.
It's really, really fun, and watching poor Bruce Campbell just torture himself, and watch Sam torture Bruce.
Okay, now attack Bruce wildly. And beat him. 1, 2, and go for it again. Higher. Hold it, Dave. Leave it there for a while. Hold. Here.
Boy, it was so much fun, and it felt like the shoot went on forever. We shot from like May till August. But it was almost like, okay, we did the first Evil Dead, we only had a couple $100,000, but now we have $3 million. So let's go all hog wild with it.
Good.
Even now we have your darling Linda's soul.
She suffers in torment.
Let's see how you like eating chainsaw, huh?
You're going down.
Chainsaw.
1, 2, 3, now.
It was on that show that we sort of realized that each of us had a different strength and we complemented each other.
And I remember one night I called the boys and I said, let's meet for dinner tonight. I have an idea. And so we all met for dinner and I said, guys, this is nonsense. I think we should start our own company.
That was at a period where there was a lot of youthful energy, and people are expressing that in different ways. And the arts have always been a notorious great place to channel that energy. And when you look at it in a cinematic way that is complemented by loud effects, explosions and sound design, it was a great way to take in all that energy, brew it around and let it explode out.
It was just part of that sort of wild, artistic, like rock and roll attitude. You know, everybody had long hair. You know, I actually probably had the longest hair of anybody, And it wasn't even something that was done intentionally, or maybe it was. Maybe because my dad was always, you'll never be anything with long hair.
I think most of us were musicians, like had that rock star fantasy going, but then we all wanted to do movies too. And I think we all found a niche where we could, you know, still look the part of like these rock stars with long hair. And I mean, we wore concert shirts, like lived in them all the time, and leather jackets, and didn't shave, and you know, we would go to work and sculpt monsters all day.
A lot of us would go to the Roxy and to the Rainbow and to the Whiskey and go see bands and hang out. And
we got crazy a lot and got out of hand a lot. You know, it was easy to lose your way. You know, you're in LA with all kind of party atmosphere and beautiful women everywhere and nightclubs and all that stuff. And
you know, we had rock and roll stars like, you know, Greg was good friends with Kirk Hammett from Metallica, and you know, those guys would always be around. It was literally like we had our own band.
You know, you would never realize the giant nerds that we really were, that we read Monster Magazine. You know, I mean, you would never think about that because we didn't look that way.
Greg and I were looking through tons of photos just the other day, and we're like, look at all this, you know, here we are with this hair and rock and roll, and all of us in like cut off sleeves and black shirts. We're like, yeah, rock and roll.
Robert Rodriguez gave me this for my birthday. The red one up there, Kirk Hammett gave to me from Metallica and signed it, and of course wrote, "Don't fuck up the guitar." It's easier when it's all distorted and you can't tell how bad you suck.
Not since the beginning of time has man known such terror. No. Ah! Creature from the Black Lagoon.
I mean, I think the first star makeup artist was definitely Lon Chaney, in large part because he also starred in the movies. He was often doing the makeup on himself. You then follow to someone like Jack Pierce. He was actually hired by Universal Studios to be the head of makeup for Universal. I mean, there is no better cinema monster in history than Frankenstein.
Jack Pierce was creating Frankenstein with cotton and a thick plastic ether-based collodion to create the Frankenstein makeup. Lon Chaney was doing nose putty and putting grease paint on so thick that when he carved into it, it looked like lines. The makeup was so thick. When I was doing the stuff, it was all animatronics and the puppets and stuff, you know. Now it's a combination of what we do and CGI.
You know, horror as a genre and fantasy underwent a huge sea change in the late 60s and early 70s. It still had elements of the fantastic, but began to embrace the real in a very serious way in the late 60s with a movie like, say, Rosemary's Baby, or in the early 70s with a film like The Exorcist, which Dick Smith worked on. They really embedded the horror in the now and in the everyday world, which was not the horror of Vincent Price, the Wolfman, Dracula, where it's all haunted castles in a far-off land with eerie music. It's very creepy, but nothing that actually the audience necessarily relates to. It's still fantasy. And so what people like Dick Smith did, if you think of those scenes in The Exorcist, when her head twists around and she vomits, it's incredibly scary because it looks like it's happening.
For years, people were very secretive about the crafts. They didn't want you to take their jobs. And if you had a specialty, they sort of kept away. And Dick Smith was really very open. And people like Rick Baker and Tom Savini would write him, when they're kids, would write him letters. Dear Mr. Smith, how'd you do that? And in fact, Rick sent Dick some photos of stuff he'd done when he was 13, 14, 15 years old. And Dick was so impressed, he hired Rick as his assistant on The Exorcist. I'd worked on well over 45 films, 50 films by the time I actually directed my first film, so I have no excuse. And I raised $60,000, and we made Schlock.
On the dawn of man comes Schlock.
The reason it's of interest at all, it's terrible, is I was 21 and Rick Baker was 20. My intention was to have this missing link, the Schlockthropist, be a bad gorilla suit. And I told him, you know, what I wanted, and he basically said, okay, I think his budget was $5,000. And all the molds for the monster, for the casting, they had to fit in his mom's oven. And Mrs. Baker said that her pies tasted like foam for years after that. Anyway, so we made the movie, and he's done well since then. Rick has done very well. And I gave him the script for An American Werewolf in London, which I'd written in '69, Gave it to him in 71 and said, here, figure this out. He just won his 7th Oscar. Does he call? Does he write? Do I get a letter? No.
You know, in my locker in high school, what was up inside wasn't the girl. It was the makeup effect of it was a gruesome zombie scene from Tom Savini in Day of the Dead, or something that Rick Baker did, or something from Evil Dead. The Greg Nicotero. You know, all of these guys were my heroes growing up, and I spent endless hours trying to emulate their tricks.
I mean, this is all fine. This is all fine.
I think the palms look really good.
The palms are great.
Yeah, I love that stuff. That looks beautiful.
So we still need some detail on the tips of the fingers, just a little texture.
Greg Nicotero is a guy who bridges a bit the different generations of makeup and special effects. So he learned under Tom Savini, one of the great masters, and has subsequently done. I'm not sure there's a movie with special effects and makeup that Greg doesn't work on right now in the industry. He's sort of omnipresent with KNB. I think he's bridging a very important gap to not just Dick Smith, but all, you know, you could really lead back all the way to someone like Lon Chaney, and you have that very direct lineage of where these makeup effects come from and the teaching of these techniques.
Ironically, one of the movies that really put KNB on the map was a film called Gross Anatomy. It was literally a movie about medical school students and the dissection of their cadavers. They said, oh, it makes complete sense. We hire a guy who has studied anatomy, who went to college and had 3 years of biology training. He will help create our bodies. And that was a significant turning point in KNB, because it got us away from just becoming a company that did slasher movies, which were at the time what everybody was making. So by starting out on a movie called Intruder, and by starting out doing these kind of gory gags, really gory gags, all of a sudden within a year we were doing this Disney film that had nothing to do with a slasher, it had nothing to do with blood or gore, and it took our company to a different place. And that snowball led directly to Dances with Wolves, because Kevin Costner looked at our portfolio and saw the cadavers from Gross Anatomy and was fascinated with the attention to detail of the musculature, the sculpture, the internal organs, and said, I need skinned buffalo for this movie.
Did Greg tell you about Casino? He called me once. He said, Dad, I'm working on a movie. I need to know if you put a man's head in a vise and tighten the vise, which way would his eyes, would they pop out or would they go in? And I said, I don't know, but I'll try to find out. So I called my friend Cyril Wecht, a world-famous gentleman, forensic pathologist, and I said, Cyril, what would happen if you put a man's head in a vise? He said, I don't know. So I called Greg and I said, the eyes would pop out. And in Casino, that's exactly the way they did it.
Cut. The only thing better than working with real pros is working with real pros who happen to be your best friends.
Well, I got a phone call from Frank Darabont. He said, I got a script I want you to read. Let me know what you think. He sent Green Mile over, and boy, oh boy, what a great script. I think the biggest challenge for this movie is everything has to be absolutely 100% authentic.
So, Frank, as you will see when you look at this, this is one of the cable versions that we have. Now, there's another one where this leg is actually the one that is flopped over, as we had previously discussed. So both legs won't be kicking, but one leg will be flopped over like it's been crushed when Percy steps on it.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go. It's from side to side.
For the electrocution sequences, we started off by putting Michael Jeter in the electric chair, strapping him in and saying, okay, we're electrocuting you, let's see what your body would do. And he acted out the entire scene under Frank's direction.
That would be cool, is if on a backward motion you suddenly get, you know.
We videotaped that, and we actually built the animatronic body to match his movements. it will intercut seamlessly because the body that we built does what Michael already established that he will be doing in the chair. I remember when I first met KNB, I was on the set of 4 Rooms and turning and seeing these 3 men all standing in a row. I think Greg was in the middle with his long hair, and they looked very mysterious and very kind of quiet and had this sort of aura about them. And Quentin introduced me to them and said he was their makeup guys, and Kurtzman, Berger, and Nicotero. So I just remember that image. They just looked very special, very strange, and just sort of hovering over the set. I knew they had done, you know, the Romero movies like Day of the Dead, and started out in that world and working on Evil Dead too. And I'm just big fans of, you know, that kind of ingenuity of coming up with things on the set. And I said, well, we're about to do something with a lot of, you know, vampire effects and makeup effects, and it turned out, you know, Kurtzman had written the script with John Esposito, so it seemed to all make sense that we'd work on it sort of together, and that's how we met. And Dusk Till Dawn became our first movie, and there was no looking back from there.
And it worked out really, really well, because how we orchestrated it was, Greg was on set all the time with Robert, and I was in the room, our makeup room, with all the guys. And we were pumping makeups out. And each of us had to do like 12 makeups a day, each, you know? Because Robert was like, boom, boom, boom. Like 7 o'clock call, the guy was on set with a camera rolling, and I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute, this isn't, don't you realize you're making a movie? We have to have like 3 hours before we start shooting after call.
You all right, Howard?
Yeah. We were working so hard that, you know, there were times we stayed. I'm like, I can't drive home, I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna sleep here on the floor. I'm like, you know, Greg come in, come on, gotta get up, time to do makeups. I'm like, oh God, I just went to bed, all right. Ugh. You know, but you did it because it was for the love of the movie, you know.
I say that they look like they're going down.
Greg and Gino, Rob Vanderstein.
Yeah, I like it, Tom.
That makes me thirsty. Look at this face, okay? I have the face of a killer, a serial killer. But I did play Charlie Brown, and You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown once. Shaved it all off, you know, nice makeup, bright colors, you know. So that's the fun. The fun is being these other characters. Most of the roles I get, yes, are the sadist, the psycho.
Probably one of the most fun nights was the premiere for From Dusk Till Dawn, because, you know, walking over to the table and talking to Clooney and Harvey Keitel and everyone, and they're like, my God, the vampires are great, and oh man, you know, and it's exciting and it's fun to have your work be respected.
So K&B for over a decade was Bob Kurtzman, Greg Nicotero, and Howard Berger. And at a certain point, Bob came to Greg and I and said, hey guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I want to move back to Ohio, where he was from. So Bob departed, and the new K&B, you know, started, and we talked about, like, should we change the name or whatever, and Greg said, well, instead of it being Kurtzman, Nicotero, Berger, let's just make it KNB EFX Group. I'm like, that works for me.
I think each movie I push Greg and them a little harder, but no, they're very fast and can help. You know, Greg's very good about getting the ideas you want and knowing what the process is. We need approvals by this date, by this date, by this date, in order to have everything delivered the way you want, and then throwing in some extra goodies on top of that. What's up, bastard?
Bastard wants his fruit plate. Bastard is tired. Bastard is hungry.
Hey, look what Bastard got.
Hey, fruit plate. Bastard loves fruit salad.
y'all. Good.
You know, Sin City broke a lot of boundaries and you know, taking graphic novel visuals and putting them on film. And, you know, Greg Nicotero was a large part of that with all of the prosthetics and everything that he did, making the characters actually look like they did in Frank Miller's art, which was really a remarkable thing. And I think that it definitely widened Hollywood's acceptance of graphic novel adaptations.
Hey, Mark. We are hard at work here on the set of Piranha, which has been horrible.
This movie's really hard. What we try to avoid is building a bunch of stuff that we'll never use. On Piranha, we never built any Piranha. I mean, we had 2 or 3 little puppets that we did for close-ups of chewing on skin.
Piranha 3D was a film that was hyped quite a bit by the horror community, by the online horror fan sites, and it got some good reviews even in mainstream press.
Oh, that's juicy. All right. He's ready.
You know, it pleased the hardcore fans who wanted to see, you know, gore and blood and, you know, a piranha eating someone's penis on camera, you know.
All right, so give me a little advanced preview of what your death is going to be like.
Well, it's going to have some blood.
Oh, you got a tube there?
Takes this pump, which heads into a bladder right here.
Yep.
As far as this looks, I'm pretty much almost dead, so I'll probably have the post-traumatic shaking.
All right, save it for the takeoff. All right, who did your makeup today?
Andy did.
Andy Schoenberg? See, makeup artists is never further than 4 feet away from their victim.
That's right.
And they're never 4 feet away from me, so it's perfect. It would be good to have the wounds at least fresh so that the blood can dry out. It's definitely bloody. Now you have a tube. Is there tubing underneath there? Very nice.
That's my tube.
Got it. Excellent.
That's pretty sweet for angles.
Oh,
That's so cool. I know.
The majority of the work that we did was the aftermath, the result of what those piranha did to people.
And gunfire! Cut!
Put the body part down, please. Thank you. It was tons of prosthetic makeups and fake bodies and all this stuff. I wasn't going to sit there and try to sell Alex Aja on the fact that we needed to make full animatronic piranha that could you flip a switch and it swims through Lake Havasu. It wasn't practical. Didn't make sense. What you do is you build what's needed for the show and then you utilize that. All right, scream, AJ. And you work hand in hand with visual effects. Derek Wentworth was the visual effects guy in Piranha, and you know, man, he had his job cut out for him because then they had to convert it to 3D on top of everything else.
A lot of times I think people miss the incredible amount of talent I see going on at other studios. People are creating full-on beautiful pieces of sculpture that are then molded and turned into rubber or whatever they need to be doing, but they're all starting with this really solid form of sculptural artwork. Sometimes we'll spend 6 months building something and we know it's going to be 4 seconds on screen.
3, 2, 1, action.
Go.
If you think about it, it's really special effects and makeup movies that invented the blockbuster era as we know it. It wasn't The Godfather, as beautiful movie as that is historic and perhaps the greatest American movie ever made. It's actually pretty much Jaws and Star Wars that invented the modern blockbuster, which are movies entirely driven by their makeup and special effects.
Hey, Brian, look down here.
Stand by. Now we go. 3, 2, 1, go!
We had 62 of the most talented special effects makeup technicians, sculptors, mold makers, painters, fabricators, and mechanical designers. And when we were doing From Dusk Till Dawn, Robert had said, oh man, I wrote this treatment for this Predator movie, and that was 1995. And then literally somebody called and said, oh, Robert said you're building all the Predators for the new movie. And it was on Ain't It Cool News, so I hadn't even read the script. We hadn't even signed a deal, and Robert was like, oh yeah, Nicotero's building all my creatures. And I went, I am? Woohoo, yay. Do it, open and close. Close. All right. takes 3 people to operate this head, and then we have the suit performer. Wait, one sec. Carrie, push that gun away, please. Quickly. Thank you. Wait 1 second. Clear that neck. You gotta tuck that neck back in. Quickly, please. And, you know, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is it's a really delicate art form to wear these suits. It's basically, you're put in a neoprene wetsuit with a 30-pound head put on your head with servos. You can't see. You're sweating. You can't go to the bathroom. And then you're expected to perform.
Boo, 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 boo. Good boy. Good boy. You're a good boy. Yes, you are. Come on. There you go.
KNB, if you want something professional, there you guys.
Yeah, and while I filmed the piece of sponge in the black tape. You know, it was a dream project, you know. It's like, next project I'll get to build the shark from Jaws and then I can die.
Well, I'm at the age where most people retire. I'm 64, I'll be 65. You know, I'm still getting offers, effects offers, acting offers, directing offers. You know, I had this effects school here. In the makeup program, there's 4 semesters, and it's a degree program.
1, 2, 3, play! The effect we were working on today is called the wax button bullet hole effect, and it's something that Dick Smith came up with. And basically you just take a button on a piece of string, embed it into a false wax forehead with some blood tubing, and then when we're ready, we aim the gun, we say fire, and you just pull the string, and it pops out, flies over the camera, you never see the button or the string, and the blood just flows. And it's a great effect because even in the world of CG, it is maintained that this is how people do this effect.
I think they either are inspired by something that they saw or a makeup artist's work, like Rob Bottin or Rick Baker or Dick Smith or my stuff or Greg's stuff, you know.
So the only piece he's wearing is, what, a forehead and nose?
We started that whole thing of bringing guests in with Dick Smith, with Greg, and other schools are now copying us, but they can't grab the top guys because we've got them.
It's really exciting for me to be able to look at people's portfolios, and I try to give them some guidance. It's not always about criticizing people's work, but it's about seeing what their strengths are and trying to encourage them. The paint job's great. I mean, I really responded to this character a lot. I mean, the proportions and the anatomy of the face is really, really nice.
Thank you.
I just, you know, I mean, I like that you can turn him from all directions, and he's interesting from every angle. This is your Creature from the Black Lagoon concept. It's cool. I know you were talking about maybe playing around with the paint job a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I like is I like the teeth that you have.
Thank you.
Really nicely done.
A lot of people can say, oh, you know, that kid, he's obsessed with horror, he's a weirdo, you know, but they don't really get it. They don't really understand what it is we do. You know, they watch a movie and they see somebody's throat get cut and blood squirts out, and they're like, oh, that's sick, why would you watch that stuff? You know, they don't really get the, you know, their magic tricks. It's more than just what it seems to other people.
Things I learned is you never show panic on set. You never sit there stammering, oh no, we're screwed. It's the word, you're gonna lose confidence. You know, there might be something they ask you, you don't know the answer, or you're like, oh boy, this is screwed up. You're like, hey, you know what, and let me just figure this out. Give me a couple minutes. I'm gonna go talk to the guys, and I'll go to the trailer like, dudes, we're so fucked. How do we figure this out? That happens a lot. We're problem solvers, you know, and we get asked to problem solve things that are very, very difficult, you know.
Alex, pump the blood. Chiz, drop.
It was great working with Howard Berger, and we just started nailing. He knew exactly what it is I wanted, and you know, and he's great because there's no excuses, you know, because there are things that don't work, You know, they don't work half the time, actually, but he never has an excuse about it. Just, okay, sorry, we're all waiting. Here we go. Try it again.
There was a gag that didn't go right, and Quentin got really upset, and he chewed me out on set. And I felt really, really bad. And I rethought the gag and figured it out, and we did it, and it worked out great. And at the end of the day, Quentin came over. He's like, "Hey, hey man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you. I'm sorry." I went, "You know what?" I said, "Don't you ever apologize to me. You're the director. You asked for something. I didn't deliver. All right? It cost you X amount of time on set. I made the mistake, but you want to know what? I rectified it, and that's what counts." He's like, "You know, you're right. That's great. Howard, thanks, man. Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
Action. Oh, all right, and hand down on your knees. Yep. I mean, I see movies that Quentin makes, and it reminds me why I love movies. I mean, he has such a love for storytelling and such a love for his characters, and he's such a encyclopedic genius about filmmaking. But there's such a passion, you know. All these guys have the same thing, and it's a passion for what they do.
We're living in an era when the filmmakers who are working now grew up watching many different kinds of movies they love, and they don't feel they have to split things off into clearly demarcated areas. So you have somebody like Quentin Tarantino, he'll put violence of a level that you would associate with the horror film into something that's not specifically a horror film. There'll be really gruesome moments, you know, like the blood-splattered rear window in Pulp Fiction, things like that.
And action cars, action cars!
Oh, hey, the leg fell off. Now, Greg knows I can't stand CGI, so he just assumed that he was going to have to build this. And then when he started talking like that, all of a sudden, yeah, let's do it in camera. Forget the, I didn't tell him I was thinking about CGI. I was like, yeah, he's right. He actually thinks, okay, let's do that. Let's do it that way.
I actually sort of made Quentin pinpoint exactly what each girl was doing at the moment of impact. So we literally took extensive photos of all the actors in those exact positions, because what we had to do is you're cutting right from that moment to impact. So we scanned all of the actors' bodies in that exact position. And we went in and re-sculpted them, added the detail, put the heads, hands, and feet on, and molded them. We shot for 3 days, pulling the bodies apart and ripping the leg off and shooting the dummies through the windshield. The last gag was the shot where Vanessa's sitting in the back seat. She's the only one that sees the crash coming, so she closes her eyes. So as the wheel comes through and rips through it, rips her face off. So we had a dummy head that had four-way neck movement in it, so we could have the head moving just a little bit. And Andy and I pre-scored the face, peeled the face away, and dressed blood on it, and then laid the face back down and tacked it with super glue. So when the wheel hit the chin, it literally took the face off. You have to be a director, you have to be an actor, you have to be a storyboard artist, you have to be a performer, you have to be a director of photography, you have to be a visual effects guy. You have to know how to do every single one of those jobs to make sure your job is done to its fullest.
The relationship I have with Greg and the relationship he has with me, it's our longest relationship, you know? It's like being married. We've been married for like 25 years, essentially. And there's always ups and downs, you know? And there is a very brotherly relationship we have.
1995, we get hired to do Pumpkinhead 2. The whole design of Pumpkinhead had these weird bones sticking out of the shoulders. So the first day, we were on set, getting ready to shoot it, and we're looking at the suit, and Gino goes, "Hey, do you think with this stick, I could knock that shoulder piece off.
Gino said that.
Yeah.
That's a plus.
And I literally said, you know what? You can do it as long as you pick it up and glue it back on. So before we ever shot a frame of film, this is a creature suit they probably spent $120,000 on. He winds up and smashes the shoulder, and the shoulder, the foam piece, just tears off and rolls 20 feet. And I went, all right, go glue it back on. I mean, it was our first day. That was the most.
Why would you do that? Eddie?
It was a circus.
The whole movie
was a circus.
And there's actually photos on the DVD of the. Remember, there's a
On the
shot
back?
on
Yeah.
the back of the pumpkin head wearing tennis shoes.
Yeah.
They didn't frame it out because we had leg extensions, but they would
Oh,
always
yeah.
yeah. And
Look,
there's a
if you
picture
do
of
a
Mark like
search-
this, and he's wearing tennis shoes.
Kevin, do a search for Pumpkinhead.
Just put it up.
Oh.
It's right here.
All right, hold on here. Spin that over here. There's got to be a photo.
Pumpkinhead.
Is
wore
that
tennis
it? Yeah, right there. Look at that picture.
Yeah, there's the tennis shoes. And this is on the back of the DVD to sell the movie, and so you're sitting there going, look at that, there's tennis shoes. So the Pumpkinhead wore tennis shoes. I don't know why we didn't get called for the third one.
Oh my God! Where to your mother?
A lot of the directors that are coming into their own now watched movies that we worked on. You know, oh yeah, man, I loved Evil Dead 2. Oh man, you know, I love Day of the Dead. You know, when I met Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, I was in awe of them because I had just seen Shaun of the Dead, and I was like, this is the greatest zombie movie in the last 20 years. And they were like, oh, Day of the Dead, oh, you know. Like, they had a reverence for what I had done. I had a reverence for what they had done.
Who is your daddy, and what does he do? Oh, my God, he looked right at me. You're not the boss of me, he said. Actually, I am.
Edgar Wright made a complete fanboy, so meeting Greg was like a real moment. And then, you know, he'd sort of jokingly mentioned to George that, oh, maybe the boys should do cameos in Land of the Dead, and, you know, George kind of went, okay. And the next thing you know, me and Edgar are in Toronto, and I'm made up as Bub from Day of the Dead.
If there wasn't makeup effects and creature effects stuff, it may not have influenced those guys to become who they became. And then their movies will, in turn, influence another generation of people.
Greg is king of the gore and king of the zombies, in my opinion. He loves it so much. I actually have witnessed Greg putting blood, looking around, no one's looking, and putting extra blood on himself. And I'm like, well, I got a lot of blood on me today. I'm like, yes, you did, Greg. I would prefer never to deal with blood ever. I really like fantasy stuff. Like, I love the Narnia worlds. We work so hand in hand with digital effects and practical. We used each other's tools, you know, and like, we can use, you know, this running shot of a Minotaur. The upper half is Shane Rangi in a suit running, and the camera comes down, and that's digital legs. And it was a great magic trick. Greg and I shared a BAFTA, and Greg's won several Emmys, and I've won the Oscar, and it's really great. You know, it's all kind of within our K&B umbrella. You know, it certainly makes people perceive you differently. If you have to pull the card out, you can. Although John Landis says, don't ever use it for evil. You know, he made a point of that when we won the BAFTA and Oscar. He's like, he came over. He's like, this is great. Wow, this is awesome. You know, don't use this for evil ever, ever, ever. You know, I'm like, okay. So I don't use it for evil.
Our ability as an audience to suspend our disbelief, particularly in horror and fantasy movies, is so integral to our understanding and our ability to incorporate this form of entertainment into our minds. If there's bad makeup, if there's a wristwatch out of place on King Kong, any of these things happen, that is shattered instantly.
And then we do action, pop, you go down, and then, okay, good, we're good to go. These are special effects. They take time. It's not just one take and you're done. Being able to direct second unit on a lot of these features does make a big difference.
One, bam!
You know, to get a really good gag, sometimes you want to finesse it. Or even when you get a good one, let's try one more. You know, you want to be able to spend some time doing it.
3, 2, 1, action! Pump the blood!
One face.
Go back in again! And take him down! And cut! Excellent. Good, good, good.
And one thing that people don't quite understand about makeup effects is often a makeup effects artist will conceive of how to shoot something. How many shots do you need? And you can do this in reverse, and you can do this, and we'll make a rubber monster for this A, B, C, and then F. And you have to shoot them in a certain order, in a certain way. So they think as directors, they think as editors, as well as thinking as makeup men.
We were working on Ghosts of Mars, we had hero makeups and mid-ground makeups and background makeups. And there was one night when camera was shooting with 3 cameras, camera shooting the main guys, and then there were 2 other cameras that were off to the side, looking deep, deep into the crowd. And deep into the crowd was all of our deep background guys that were put there to fill the space. And I went over to John, I'm like, John, you know, that camera is shooting a close-up on a mask that should never be shot close-up. And he's like, what? Why are you bothering me with this? I'm bothering you with it because when you're in the editing room, your editor might not notice that that's a mask. Your editor might just cut the piece in because it feels like it flows, and then I'll sit there and watch the movie and go, fuck me. There's a close-up on a mask.
Special makeup effects artists, the men, are the biggest divas in show business. Each and every one of them.
There is so much about what we do that people don't know, that the amount of prep that it takes to build something. You know, they just think that you just show up on set and you open a box and it's done, and you flip a switch and it goes.
They take so long to set this shit up. I gotta tell you. Oh my God. You get a nice little patience in shooting a film. The actors are cooking and the crew is cooking. You hit the special makeup effects and this thing skids to a stop. And everybody stands around and waits, and they bring this rubber pile of stuff out and they move it around and manipulate it. Can we put that more or less light? I don't know. We have to hide the wires. Really? Wires? This is a modern age and you're still using wires?
So if I'm standing there and I'm watching this scene play out and I see a cable coming out of the ground, or somebody walking and about to pull the bloodline out, which would ruin the effect, you know, there are times when you have to go, I got to go in and touch that guy up.
Oh, mighty divas, you have arrived on the set to save my movie.
And 3, 2, 1, action. Nothing came out. You know, if you do a slit throat and the guy's got a white shirt on, and 2 seconds before the take, a droplet of blood hits the white shirt, everyone goes, stop. We got to change the shirt now. And everyone goes, oh, great. We got to change the shirt. And it's like, you could leave the drop of blood there. It's not my movie. I don't care. Do you want it to be perfect? Do you want it to be great? Do you want it to look good? And that's what we have to do. 3, 2, 1, action. And you're dead. And what I would never want to happen is for somebody to go, oh, the makeup effects took me out of that movie. So as diva-ish as we may appear, the whole issue is to make the movie better on camera. So to you, Mr. John, smartass.
My God.
The mid-'80s had like a brotherhood about it. And even though you didn't work at maybe one particular shop, there was still like a reverence with all of us, because we were all doing this craft, this art that we had trained ourselves to. I don't feel that anymore, you know. Part of it maybe because we've been doing it 25 years and some of that has slipped away, and there's no newcomers that have that brotherhood about them. And I also think, too, productions have changed.
There has been an industrialization of the industry, and you could kind of track it, you could watch it, because it may start from, you know, you're asked to do something for a production in a quicker amount of time. And once you've done that, they don't necessarily see the hardships of it. They just see that, well, that was done in 3 months instead of 5. So next time, they may be doing 3 months, but a producer may be the new hotshot who says, I'm going to do it in 2.5.
You know, we have to work within the boundaries and the limitations production sets forth. And that is the financial limitations and also time frame limitations. And sometimes we will produce really excellent work for a reasonable amount of money in a very short period of time. Unfortunately, that raises the bar as well. Production's very happy, but it can sometimes cause friction with other shops like, guys, come on. You know, the shops that had some bone of contentions with us about that have now had to succumb to that. And I basically remember calling one of the guys and going, welcome to the party, pal, because this is what it is. It's not like, well, we'll just take our time and, you know, we can ask for $10 million. I'm like, those days are long gone. They are. It's just the way it is, you know. They don't care if it's good or bad. They just care about money. Like, well, how little do we have to spend?
Some of these guys have spend a lot of money keeping their shops open. And they need a lot of, they do, it's expensive. So you need a lot of movies churning through there.
It's not every day's Halloween, we're slapping each other with severed arms and squirting fake blood all over the place. Oh, look at me, I'm dying, you know. It's not like that at all. It's, you go to set, and let's say you're working on a $100 million film, you've got $100 million on your shoulders at that point. And the thing that you've come up with, or that everyone here working as a team has come up with, has to work. And if it doesn't work, well, then you've failed on a $100 million film. And everyone's looking at you and it's your fucking fault. That's pressure.
The first Jurassic Park really hit like, oh boy, look at this. Dinosaurs, unbelievable. Initially, we were kind of like, oh, they're going to put us out of business, and if this will be the end of it.
A lot of people feel that visual effects have stolen the thunder for makeup effects, sets, stunts, physical effects. The way that I perceive it is, we're a tool, a viable tool, just like a stuntman is a viable tool, just like physical effects is a viable tool, the set designer is a viable tool. Ultimately, what it always comes down to is money.
The clock is ticking when you're on set. It's $100,000, $150,000 a day to get a film made. So to save time, to make your day, they'll do whatever it takes. So that means, all right, we'll screw the puppets or screw the guy in the mask. We'll add it CG later. That's the sort of laziness that has come about with the sort of the new directors. And it's not their fault. It just, you know, they're trying to make their day. And the last thing they need to hear is, well, we need an extra hour to put the mask on, or we need, you know, we need an hour to rehearse the puppet.
We've been on set where it's been like, we literally need 15 minutes. We don't have 15 minutes. You don't have 15 minutes, really. I just watched your director play his PSP for an hour and a half, and that's okay, but we don't have 15 minutes to set up a gag that will save you maybe $400,000 in post. We got to move on. I'm like, this is insane.
The thing with CGI, and I hate to say this, is it allows the directors much more freedom in the post-process. Because if a performance you don't like of a guy in makeup or a puppet doesn't do something you want, we can replace it. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. We can do whatever they want. The sky's the limit.
Fans and moviegoers in general have become so much more sophisticated in what they expect in the effects of their films. I mean, now TV shows have the quality of effects that you were used to seeing only in feature films, you know, 15 years ago.
Set. And action!
On The Mist, a lot of the stuff that we did was built specifically for the actors to interact with. And a lot of it, like the bug that lands on Marcia Gay Harden's chest and crawls up her chest, we knew that was always going to be a visual effect. We always knew that that creature was going to be sculpted, molded, and designed And then that design was given over to the visual effects department, and then they could animate it. Same with a lot of the spiders. You know, we had built a couple oversized spider puppets and large puppets, but building a spider puppet that crawls up and down the walls and into spiderweb, that's not practical. I thought The Mist was a really good example of us working hand in hand with visual effects. Even the shot of the giant spider on the hood of the car was something that I set up and shot because I knew that it would be a cool shot and that it would work. And then even Frank Collins said, wow, that was a great shot. He hadn't wanted that to be a puppet shot. He had always wanted that to be a visual effect shot. But he saw it and he went, hey, that works.
The digital and practical effects have a marriage, and that marriage is becoming more and more solid as the technology in both areas grow.
You know, I wonder at times if the era of great monsters isn't sort of over. You know, in the age of computer-generated imagery, the ability to create almost anything that an artist dreams up. In some ways, you actually wonder if that doesn't hurt the presentation of monsters on screen. There was something about the limits of makeup that allowed creativity within that limits to flourish. And so there's something about those handmade monsters, whether it's Ray Harryhausen's stop motion effects or Greg Nicotero's zombies from The Walking Dead. There's something about the fact that they're man-made, you can tell, that makes them scarier and more authentic than a digital image.
This is robot.
Model B9 activated.
That's our baby announcement. When Devin was born, I had my friend Frank Dietz draw that, so it's all the monsters around that little. And she let me do it. She didn't even care, so there you go.
We met through another first AD at the Whiskey, way back when, and we hit it off. Everything was great, and then I left on location. So I was like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm going to Minnesota for 3 months. We had talked about him doing a short because he had the shop, and we had talked about how we would do it, how we would raise the money, what we do, and I just kept saying, if you're going to direct, go do it.
United Monster Talent Agency. United Monster Talent Agency. The count only takes calls after dark. Thank you.
The original idea all came from an idea I had had years ago about this fake ad for Universal Studios. Kind of a what if in the 50s Universal actually had a company that housed real creatures and they used the real monsters to make all of their films with.
Can't let the dust settle on this Hollywood star. He's just been booked for 2 more pictures.
It was the first time that I was working on a set where it wasn't like I was taking somebody else's work and shooting inserts or close-ups or pickups of somebody else's stuff. It was me, my vision, my idea. I had the support of everybody around me.
You know, we didn't have a production office, it was us. So it was me with Veronica and a bunch of people at the shop, and my first AD, David Waters, and my second seconds and my friends, and all our crew, and a lot of help from the show I was working on, 24.
I would have you come in the morning and do the Hunchback makeup first up while they're doing the zombies. We have 12 extras that day, so we're gonna be, you know, they'll be all hands on deck. And then we have the Wolfman shooting here, and Howard and Tammy want to do the Wolfman, so they will do the transformation. And then day 3, it's going to be the Mummy, which you'll do, and then maybe you guys will do the Glenn Strange Frankenstein makeup then. I knew that it had to look good, and I knew that I needed some recognizable faces in it. So I called Eli, I called Dana Gould, I called Serena, I called Frank. Robert Rodriguez is in it. Action, Robert. Shark.
Greg has such a presence in this business, and he is so like essential to this genre and to this business, and he has worked with some of the most famous people on the planet, and but he is so humble.
All right, so go like you're pretending to grab her face. See, look at those claws.
Yeah, that's freaky. He has that sort of like excitable energy, like, yay, this is gonna be fun, and it makes everybody else excited, and definitely there was that energy on set.
And cut! And
Eli was so fantastic. When we did the scene with him and Dana, he came to set and he was prepared. He was on the mark.
And cut! Great! All right, fellas, on to the haberdashery.
It really is Greg peeling the top of his skull back and saying, look at everything in my brain. Here's where I come from. Here's where my psyche is rooted. It's the kid who was up, you know, till all hours in his pillow fort, you know, watching some ridiculous, you know, black and white thing on television, getting that out of his system. So I love the United Monster Talent Agency. It's Greg, it's a very dear friend of mine, getting to really express himself, you know, express his love for this stuff that formed him, you know, this stuff that we all love and this stuff that we all do.
I guess the thing that keeps me going is the craft, you know. John Ford made, what, 150 flicks, and I made 15. So he had a lot of tricks in his pocket, and I'm still learning, you know.
You know, I wrote American Werewolf in 1969, and I made the movie in 1981, and it was only because Kentucky Fried and Animal House and Blues Brothers had made so much money that they went, oh, okay, you know.
You have to be lucky, and you have to be resilient and be able to land on your feet when things go wrong. You have to be able to think fast. You give up a lot, though. You give up a private life. You give up sanity and health and all these things. And I don't mind being typecast. I got to become John Carpenter. What's wrong with that?
It's sort of like going through a battle with somebody. There have been a few not so victorious moments, and I would be lying if I said that there weren't, because that's the nature of life. Life isn't perfect, and you can't control everything. And ironically, George Romero was one of the people that said that to me. We did a gag on Land of the Dead where a zombie comes up and bites a girl on the cheek. And it was a gelatin appliance and blood tubing and everything, and it took a long time to prep it. And then right as we were rolling, the girl brought her arm up and blocked the whole gag. And George was like, great, cut. I loved it. It was perfect. And he saw me sitting there like devastated. He's like, what's the matter? And I said, oh, well, the gag kind of got blocked. And he said, you know what? If it was a zombie trying to bite you in the face, do you think you wouldn't do everything in your power to knock that person off? And he goes, Greg, things aren't perfect. And it's the imperfections that make it real. So this is all mechanical, and his little jaw movement.
King Kong may have been 75 years ago, but he still lives and breathes in the imaginations of the artists that make movie magic.
It's the creature's birthday. As a kid, I locked myself in my bedroom. I'd go to school, come home, do my homework, and work the rest of the night until my mom said, you're done, go to bed. And then I'd do it again and again and again, you know. It was sculpting, painting, you know, making masks. It didn't really matter. It had to be monster related. My room was filled with walls of monsters everywhere. And that's just something that doesn't, I feel doesn't really exist right now, and that makes me sad.
What? What? It's okay if I get the lens wet, right?
I'm actually concerned about what happens after we're done. And I'm afraid that once we're done, this is done. Because I don't really feel there's anybody to pass the baton to. The feeling of, you know, I have to make monsters or I will die doesn't exist anymore.
I think that people still love filmmaking and still love the idea of being scared and you know, the idea of monsters. If you sit there and you go, that's it, we're all dead, you know, see ya. I mean, you can't, I mean, I don't know, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to put a nail in the coffin of something that I love so much, because when I was a little kid, I watched all these movies and I got influenced and inspired by them, and I still have a passion for it, and clearly the passion that I have will certainly affect someone down the road. So I would disagree wholeheartedly with the, oh, we're the last generation, and from this moment on, no one's going to ever remember Creature from the Black Lagoon. Really? Well, maybe I'm being naive, but to me, classic is called a classic for a reason.